With that, I would like to invite our next guest of honor and our speaker, Mr. Ashok Amritraj, the chairman and CEO of Hyde Park Entertainment Group, coming all the way from Los Angeles, USA. Welcome and thank you.
Honorable Minister, ladies and, well, there are a few gentlemen, so ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here this morning. I landed a couple of hours ago, so might be a little, I'm not responsible for many of the things I'm going to say. It was, it's a little worrying that the gentleman who spoke before me, the doctor, had done 48,000 surgeries. He's got an extraordinary hotel. The gentleman who ran the railways and the airlines. So, as when I met my wife for the first time about 26 years ago, it was an arranged marriage, and I knew her for a few hours, and I was sitting with her, and she says, do you do anything worthwhile? So I said, well, that's a difficult question. I said, not really, I only make movies. So she said, oh, okay, well, then it's going to be easy. So women have played a very important part in my life. Growing up, my mother was an extraordinarily strong figure. She placed the first tennis racket in my hand and in my brother's hands. She started her own business, built it up for many years. I remember when I went to America for the first time, the guys used to ask me, now, we hear that in India, the women walk 3 paces behind the men. So we said, well, in our family, we all walk 3 paces behind my mother. That's a fact of life. So she's been an extraordinary influence all the way through my life, and playing tennis at Wimbledon and US Open and so on, and then finally making it to LA. The motion picture business has always been in my blood, and when I got there in the mid-70s, I dropped off my bags and went around to the studios, Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers and Walt Disney and so on, and all these studios that I'd read about. So went around, played for the LA tennis team for the next 5 years, and then in early 1981, I decided, to take the plunge into the movie industry. I made a lot of friends, Sidney Poitier and Charlton Heston, and a number of people were friends. So I said, how difficult could this be? So I got into it, and for the next 5-6 years. Now at that time, of course, diversity and gender equality and all of this was not quite talked about as much as it is today. So I was surrounded by a sea of white faces, and trying to make it in the entertainment industry was not quite the same as making it in tennis. It wasn't about being better or worse. A lot had to do with, being a part of the club. So for the first 5 years, I used to play tennis at all these people's homes in Beverly Hills, where they would love to see me on their tennis court, because I look good on the tennis court. But none of them wanted to make a movie with me. So it took me, I would say 6 years or so before I made my first movie. And then in 1984, I'm sitting in my office and I get an 8x10 manila envelope, and I open it up and there's a photograph of this actor. So I look at it and there's a phone number at the bottom of the picture. So I called him up and I said, come over to the office. So he comes over to the office. We sit down and chat for a while. He can't speak English very well. I said, what do you do? What do you do? So he said, well, I act. So I said, yeah, I know, I produce, but what do you do for a living? What do you do for money? So he said, well, I drive limousines. So I said, okay. He said, we make movie? I said, sure. So we go around to all the studios, everybody kicks us out. Don't get a movie made. And anyway, 6 years later, I'm sitting at the Cannes Film Festival, and this young man comes running up to me, and he says, out of 800 photographs I sent out, you were the only guy who called me back. I didn't feel like telling him I had nothing to do at that time. But he said, you're the only guy who called me back. We've got to make a movie together. And his name was Jean-Claude Van Damme. and we make this movie called Double Impact. And movie comes out the following year and became a big hit, and pretty soon people start returning my calls and things change. But it's been an extraordinary run. I've had amazing women that I've worked with, wonderful actors like Angelina Jolie and Sandy Bullock and Kate Hudson, and a very young Aishwarya Rai when we did Jeans together, amongst many others. We recently did a movie as my company expanded into the digital world. We recently did a movie where we had our principal cast was all female. All of our crew, pretty much 90%, director of photography, so on, were all female. So it's a complete sort of, I think, coming of age. I've always felt that women have a better work ethic than men. Sorry about that. But it's just that they seem to work harder and in many cases have this extraordinary stamina and energy that is totally amazing. So it's always been they've always played a very important part of my life. Now that I have a 23-year-old daughter who works with me and keeps me in line, that is equally important, and so she's the only granddaughter in the family. So it's fantastic, and it's just such a great pleasure to be here this evening. And for all of you, our world is much more open today. Our methods of distribution, the platforms, social media. I think each of us get to change the world socially, culturally. We get to speak to all of the other people on the planet, so each of us can make a difference, and you know, I wish you all the best. Thank you.
An absolute pleasure to hear from an internationally renowned, award-winning producer with a career spanning 30 years. It's an honor. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Cheryl Kumar Templeton, the founder of the Chocolate Log and Vine Oaks, a winery, all coming all the way from McLeodganj, Himachal Pradesh. Welcome, ma'am.